Let's say hello to Scott Gecas, Walsh Trading at the edge of the trading floor. What's the volume like today, Scott?
For Friday, it's actually pretty decent. So just going into the weekend, we expect a little bit of a pullback and just in volume in general. So especially, here in Chicago, it's a little nice for a change. So we don't really expect, people to stick around too long in the summer going into the weekend. So, but, overall, the volume is kind of decent. Everyone is focusing purely based on the weather. It's overshadowing all the tariff talk, all the trade war talk. Everyone is mainly focusing on the weather. When we have about, 2 to 4 inches in the next seven-day forecast, so we're going to be focusing on that for the next few days.
Scott, everybody seems to be talking a lot about this corn market here. What do you think? Going all the way up to 457, still above 450 at this point on that front month. What do you see here in the and from a technical standpoint, I should say?
Well, from a technical standpoint, the trend is your friend. If you try to fight this trend, it's like stepping in front of a moving train. So, for everything that we're looking at, especially, on the technical side, we still got a little bit more ways to run. We're over contract highs. It's something called white space. There's really not too many levels on that type of side, but it's definitely not a market you want to get in front of and get short.
Is the trade starting to talk about maybe some of these soybean acres not getting planted?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things. So with the soybeans, we're looking around 7 to 10 million unplanted acres. So if that really happens, we have yet to see. That crop report, or the crop progress report on Monday, is going to be able to tell us a little bit more information. We'll have a better idea moving forward.
And the wheat here is just a little bit weaker today, particularly in the Chicago and Minneapolis market. But that weakness seems to kind of put a little bit of weight around the neck of the Kansas City wheat market also.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things that we're looking at in the wheat is just the quality concerns. With the wet weather, how is that going to affect it? Everyone's talking about quality concerns that we've been talking to. So we have yet to see how that's really going to play out. But again, in the next 7 to 10 days, we're going to see how much rain we really get and how that's really going to affect these markets.
Is the trade talking much about this June 28th report yet?
Not yet. Everything is completely being overshadowed by the weather. So we're going to see how this really plays out over the next few days.
Yep, that weather forecast has really been a driver this spring. Scott, we'll be back in just a moment and get everybody up to date on the livestock trade next year on the Market Day Report. Scott, it just seems like there is a lot of maybe some heavy atmosphere around this entire protein complex.
Yeah, for sure. With the weather being as bad as it has been, it's definitely hurting seasonal domestic demand. No one's out there grilling in the rain, that's for sure. So with that being said, they're just not buying it. So that's one of the reasons why you're seeing a big pullback in all the protein complex. So with the cattle market, the weights are off about 1.1% versus last year. That's definitely a factor that people are looking at. On the technical side, we have to hold that 105 level.
Okay, if for some reason that 105 level does give way, then what happens?
Then just like support and resistance levels, just typical. If we get that close below that 105, we should see a little bit of follow through, a spike in volume as well as a spike in volatility.
Sure, a lot of still some news floating about African swine fever, about how much that China has culled so much of their herd, and then there's still talk about it continuing to spread. Possibly even there are people that are still saying that the United States is bracing just in case. Is the market feeling the same way?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a big concern because it's very clear that it's not being contained at all. And with the Chinese numbers, we don't know really how accurate they are. And, they still continue to buy. We had a couple weeks that they had the largest exports on record. And even though the weekly exports were falling off a little bit, they were still a buyer. And they still represent almost 30% of all of USDA's pork sales.
Okay, so obviously they're still wanting to buy pork. At some point, do you think that they will also come to the United States to buy beef if we should get some kind of an agreement?
That's the hopes, and that's one of the headlines that everyone's looking for. So if that headline does break, yeah, you're going to see a big spike in pretty much all the protein complex across the board.
All right, Scott, sure appreciate it. Hope you have a good afternoon. Scott Gecas here with us. Let's go over here to the board. Crude oil and heating oil. We'll check that and see where those prices are right now.